except where them hands, where them holes, where them throws, you know what I'm saying?
If I've done this right, you may be seeing some videos spliced in here and there of a duck. Because you may be wondering if the pro-life journalist Savannah Craven was a sitting duck when she was punched. She actually wasn't. If you look at the final video, it looks like the punch just came from out of nowhere. When I watched it the first time, I thought the punch just came from out of nowhere. When I watched it the second and third time, I did. Then when I watched the complete video the first time, I was like, it still kind of seems like it was from out of nowhere. But the fourth time, I really paid attention to it, and it wasn't from out of nowhere. And how this relates to the martial arts is this. In what we call traditional martial arts, like your karates and your taekwondo, you have an exercise that's called one-step sparring. It's where one person yells and goes like this, Kya! Signaling they're getting ready to attack. The attack doesn't happen until the defender gets into a fighting stance and yells back that they're going to attack, or they get into their own down block and yell, depending on your style, and say that they're going to attack. They have to yell, Kya! And then the person yells and punches and throws one punch to indicate the attack, and then the defender counters, blocks or parries, counterattacks, and then they may do a throw and then one hit. That's called one-step sparring. The internet thinks that it is the most useless exercise in all traditional martial arts. And I used to think so because of all these things of how, oh, it's not alive, you're not moving, and all this other stuff. How can you apply it to daily life? But you do. It applies because a lot of times in the violence that most people get into, you have to consent for it to happen. You usually have to agree to it. And if you look at the thing that makes the attack on, let me make sure I've got her name right. Savannah Craven was punched by a lady named Brianna J. The reason why it seems like this one, it seems like it's from out of nowhere, is because it happens over a long period of time. The entire video is 21 minutes. That's a long period of time. So the buildup is so slow that you can miss it. But it is there. It's very subtle, but it's there. So your typical pre-attack indicators aren't obvious, but they're still there. That involves, let me get to that. I have notes here on my laptop. That involves an aggressive stance. Rivers is kind of in an aggressive stance. If you really look at her feet, it is like the same way people stand in one step. She did shift her weight back, but she just didn't do it and then attack right away. She did it and waited longer than most people would. She had her left foot forward, had her weight lean back on her right leg. She didn't have a clenched fist, but she does have her right hand back if you're really paying attention. And instead of punching with the hand that's close, which was her front lead hand, and in traditional martial arts, that would be down like here. She did have her left hand out in front. And I was thinking she would hit her with that hand if she's going to hit her. But she hit her with the power hand from the back, which is from the right side, which is where your typical attack comes from the one-step drill. So she had the weight shifted on the back, and then it came forward. So those are those are a lot of the typical things they call pre-attack indicators. If you still don't understand what I'm talking about, look up pre-attack indicators. So those are there. Those are there. I'm going to quote one of my favorite authors, and he says he's a martial mechanic. I still consider him a martial artist. Most violence comes with instructions on how to avoid it. That's Mark McYoung. That means like if somebody's angry, they say, leave me alone. And you leave them alone, they probably won't punch you in the face. But if you keep going after them and trying to talk to them, it's like, no, then they might end up hitting you. If they say, hey, man, back up off me. And if you don't back up off of them, if you come towards them after they say, hey, man, back up off me, then they may attack you. That is still like the kill. I call it the Kia consent. Now, sometimes there are random attacks, and people just take you by surprise and ambush you, and yes, that does happen. But still, a lot of times, with the violence that most regular civilians, people like us that aren't police officers, that we get in, not always. I'm not going to say always, but a lot of times, I hate to admit it, it does happen without consent. We are contributing to it. So let me go into a bigger list of pre-attack indicators, and all these are in the video. And I haven't found a list of these online. This is my list that I go by. And I used to think I was being paranoid with all these, but I'm not. Clearly from that video, I'm not. They are anger, aggressive stance, clenched fist, weight shifted loaded on the back foot, usually from the right side, raised voices and insults, irrationality, and the person gets too calm. Now, anger. I'm not going to go through the physical ones I already went through. I'm going to jump to the ones like anger. If you're talking to somebody and they get angry, it has been my experience that a lot of times when somebody gets angry, there's a possibility that they may hit you. Now, I know a lot of people like to get angry. And see, this is where a lot of people get in trouble. Because a lot of people like to get angry, right? And they like to do that to intimidate people. But they don't really mean it. I'm sure you've heard the expression of selling wolf tickets. They get angry, but they don't really mean to. But the problem is, when you run into someone who comes from a culture, subculture, or area where if you get angry with them, then they have to save face. So they get angry back and they're ready to escalate towards physical violence. You have a problem because you've walked into a territory that you probably don't really want to be in, but you got angry and then it's too late. And some people, once they get angry, they can't calm themselves down. I'm not saying that is right. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm saying that it is, that it exists, and that you have to be careful. And where is that depicted in 1 steps? Kill! That's anger. That is anger. That's a formalized, ritualized representation, in my opinion, of anger. So I already talked about an aggressive stance, a clenched fist, weight shifted back. Let's talk about raised voices and insults. To me, that's still part of kill. When someone's voice starts getting loud in a conversation, just because it doesn't always go there, a lot of times it can't. Now, some people are loud talking, and if they get passionate and they start talking about something, they get loud, you get loud, You got to look at the energy behind it. In this instance in the video, if you go back and watch the whole video, which I won't link to, when those voices are getting loud like that, that wasn't in the spirit of, two people, because I know I do this when I'm talking to people sometimes. I get loud and animated. It wasn't that. It wasn't stuff that's stereotypical to certain ethnic groups of which I'm a part. It wasn't that. This was raised voices and insults. People start doing name calling. When people start doing name calling in a discussion, that's still ritualized by kill. And then when you yell back that you're ready, kill, that's taking the raised voices and insults like down to the most just simplest level possible, primal grunting. Irrationality. That's a great indicator. If you're talking to someone and they just seem like what they're saying is just totally irrational and makes no sense. I used to wonder when I was young why, if old people felt, they said, boy, you ain't making no sense, get away from me. And they just leave. I understand why they do that now. Because if the speaking is not rational, if it can't follow a trail, that's an indication of the thinking. That could be an indication of the emotion, that the emotion is not rational. So if there's irrationality, that could be a problem. Here's something else that's in here. There are a couple more points that are in here. I'm going to see, no, you know what? I'm going to record it and drop it in here. This is where, let me see if I can find it.
It hurts families and it hurts babies.
And I think that there is often violence at the end of a very irrational argument. When you realize you have nowhere else to go logically, it's easy and wrong that people reach then for violence. I'm curious, Savannah, what happened there after the camera?
So hopefully you picked up that comment from for where she's being interviewed. That violence can often come at the end of an irrational argument. I couldn't have said it better myself. So I'm not. There's another thing that I call being too calm. When a person has been loud, and you get past the insults, and then all of a sudden they get really quiet. They pull back, they get real quiet. And they might kind of look away a little bit. That's when an attack may come. That's actually symbolized, if you pay attention in the beat between the steps of one steps. Ki for the attacker, ki for the defender. Before the defender punches, they move. They don't ki and then move. They move as they ki. There's a little silent break right before the punch that they're supposed to throw. That's where that tiny bit of quiet, in my opinion, is reflected in there. If someone is just too calm from what you think they should be after they've been really upset, and they just get really calm and quiet, the best thing for you to do, and this is stuff I've observed over the years, the best thing to do is just to walk away. It's just to walk away. So if you want to learn about regular, smuggler, civilian self-defense, the type of stuff that most people usually get themselves into, study all those pre-attack indicators. So YouTubers have done plenty of coverage on this. I decided to examine this issue because this is the type of thing that actually you can learn to handle or deal with if you are learning traditional martial arts. That kind of violence, in my opinion, is really the type of stuff that traditional martial arts is designed for and how it can be used nowadays. In addition to the health benefits, in addition to it just being plain old fun and exercise, and an interesting activity, that type of thing. If you have a job or a hobby where you may have to deal with people who have emotions and deal with sensitive topics where people may get pugilistic, it'd be a good idea for you to study martial arts and especially pay attention to the dynamics of your one steps and even of your forms. And how? One thing, and then I'll close. If you notice, the June B position like this is just like how people stand when they ball up both fists so that they may try to make closed hand contact with your face. Thanks for watching this video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this with people like to talk about the martial arts in peace. And as always, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Peace.